From the Jennings Communication Building on the campus of Dixie State University, this is Trailblazer Weekly, starring Carrick Segmiller and Drayson Ball.
Welcome inside Trailblazer Weekly on a wet and rainy Wednesday afternoon. We are live on the CEC TV, the Dixie State Athletics YouTube page, and on Radio Dixie 91.3 FM, coming at you live from Jennings Communication Building in Studio A. I'm Drayson Ball, and as you can see, I am running things solo today. Carrick Segmiller will not be joining me on today's show. He is on his way right now to Colorado Springs, Colorado, with the women's soccer team. The soccer team was selected to place in the quarterfinal matchup of the South Central Regional. They were the 5th seed and selected there to play on Friday over in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and Carrick Segmiller's SID duties with the school had him leave for that matchup today, and so he will not be joining me on today's show, but I will be running things solo today. Going to be a quick show, a 30-minute episode. We had some time constraints and wanted to get you a show. Obviously, next week is fall break with Thanksgiving, and so we're not going to have a show next Wednesday. So we wanted to do a show today, get a quick 30-minute show today in, and didn't want to go 2 weeks without a show. And once again, we are live and want to get things started today, as we always do with our weekend observations. It's going to be just my weekend observations, so let's not waste any more time on a quick Wednesday afternoon. Let's jump into my weekend observation.
It's time for Carrick and Drayson's Weekend Observations.
A lot of things I could have chosen for my weekend observation this week. A ton of stuff going on, and a lot of noteworthy storylines throughout the entire Dixie State Athletics universe. Obviously could have chosen, women's volleyball yesterday defeated Colorado State University Pueblo in their RMAC quarterfinal matchup. The women's swimming team opened up their the Human Performance Center, the first ever home meet for the women's swimming team. Obviously pretty noteworthy for that women's swimming team. Obviously, I mentioned the women's soccer team getting selected to participate in the South Central Regional Tournament. All those really good candidates for weekend observations, but it's got to go to football. And this football team played on Saturday, defeated Adams State 35-10, and what a season it has been for this Dixie State football team, finishing 8-3, the best record in the Division II era, and did it in its final season in the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference and its final season in Division II. I mean, that's it. We are done. There was some rumors that Dixie State may have gotten selected to a bowl game at the end of the season. Those rumors have been nixed. They will not participate in that bowl game in which they were potentially rumored to be invited to, and so their season is over. But what a season it was, 8-3 overall, and for a football team coming into the season that we had a lot of questions about. We talked a little bit about kind of what this football team would be throughout the entire year, and I think 8-3 exceeded a lot of our expectations. Carrick and I were talking before the season even started, and we knew this football team had the potential to do a lot of great things. And I think 8-3, if we had been told that they would go 8-3 at the end of the year, I think we would be extremely happy about that. And coming into a season where you had so many questions, you had so many distractions, so many storylines. Obviously, the previous head coaching staff led Dixie State last season to a 7-4 record, the best record and most wins in a season at that point, and that coaching staff was let go, was not brought back, and obviously there was some animosity amongst maybe some of the players, the football team, the community. Certainly there was some questions on social media about why you would let a football coach go that led your team to the best record it's ever had in the Division II era. And then obviously that was a big distraction coming into the season. You brought in Coach Paul Peterson, who was a transfer from Snow College, a JUCO program, and so you didn't really know, is he obviously going to be able to translate into, from a JUCO program to a Division II program. You obviously knew he had a great record there, but you didn't really know, will it translate and work, do well in this program. You had the travesty in the offseason with Abraham Reinhardt. So there was just a lot of noise, there was a lot of distraction, there was a lot of questions coming into the season for the Dixie State football team, and I think every single one of those questions were answered, and it ultimately led to a tremendous football season for this team. And like I mentioned, 8-3 overall, and the only losses were to two ranked teams, which was CSU Pueblo, and then 2 weekends ago against Colorado School Mines, you had the loss against Shattern, which if you had back, you wish you could have maybe won that one and got to nine wins. But that's all in the past. Like I mentioned, Trailblazers culminated that season last Saturday with a win against Adams State, 35-10, and it was a great game. It was one of those games where you looked at it on paper. As we get to see some of the offensive highlights here, you see Cody Wilstead. He played tremendous. It was a game on paper where you figured the Trailblazers were going to win this one. You had some questions at quarterback. Tanner Hammond was the starter. He came in and played well. He was 11 of 15 for 75 yards, but just wasn't able to get anything going for the Trailblazers. We didn't really have any sort of offensive spark for Dixie State's offense. And then, of course, Cody Wilstead came in, and he was kind of that electric guy. And the first pass he completed was a one-handed catch by Chase Hess, who went into the end zone and on his first pass. And that kind of really got Dixie State's momentum going after they had fumbled. And Adams State scored on that possession with a field goal and took a 3-0 lead early on in the game. And so that was the biggest thing for me, is the Trailblazers were kind of flat early on in that first quarter until Cody Wilstead came in and on his first pass attempt completed a touchdown pass to Chase Hess, and that really got him going. And the more you look at this game, the more you think, Dixie State, should have won this game at least by the margin that they did. Adams State came into this game all banged up. John Buxa, their all-RMAC candidate quarterback, was not playing in that game, was injured. The RMAC leader in passing reception yards, Tariq Bitson, did not play in that game. He was injured as well, and so you wondered where the offense was going to come from for Adams State, and they really didn't have any sort of offensive game plan that would have been able to rival what Dixie State was doing defensively. They came in, they ran a lot of wildcat, they ran a lot of kind of trick plays and plays designed to get Dixie State off its guard, and that was their game plan coming in, and you knew just looking at that there's no way that they're going to be able to outscore Dixie State with that offensive game plan, and they weren't. Only able to score 10 points, and the Trailblazers put up 35 points of their own. I thought, the Trailblazers controlled this game throughout the entire game, really. I mean, other than the first maybe 2 or 3 possessions after the fumble and the subsequent field goal from Adams State. After that, Dixie State controlled the entire game. In fact, scored 28 unanswered points after that opening field goal from Adams State. I mentioned Cody Wilstead. He came in. He and Chase Hess were a common combo in that Saturday's win. In fact, we're going to make this our Rock Canyon Bank by the numbers feature. The numbers that they put up between the two of them set some records and just did a lot of remarkable things. Cody Wilstead, 18 of 29 for 341 yards and 5 touchdowns. That ties a single game record for most passing touchdowns in a single game. Obviously, a handful of guys in Dixie State's history have completed 5 touchdown passes in a single game, and Cody Wilstead joins that group. He was named the RMAC Offensive Player of the Week after a performance like that, and rightly so. I mean, like I mentioned, he just was the spark that came into that game. And then, of course, you can't call out Cody Wilstead if you don't call out Chase Hess. I mean, he was absolutely remarkable in that game, and he's been great all throughout the season. Really, he's been a very consistent guy for Dixie State, and we've not had a tight end like Chase Hess in the previous couple of years. Obviously, we've had a few good ones come out of this program in years past, but we haven't quite had a guy like Chase Hess who just does just about everything for Dixie State. 6 receptions, 83 yards, 3 touchdowns. The 3 touchdown receptions are a single game record, 4 touchdown receptions. And so there was just all kinds of records that fell, not only the team records, but there was all sorts of records that fell for this Dixie State football team. I'm going to name a few of those records right now that this year capped off just a year to remember with several different records fall. First ever shutout for Dixie State was against New Mexico Highlands. That's the first time they've ever had a shutout in the Division II era. They won that game 55-0 against New Mexico Highlands. CJ Luongo became the all-time leader in career rushing touchdowns. He was already the leader for rushing yards in a career, and so he's the rushing king for Dixie State. DeJuan Dancer, we mentioned this on last week's show, the all-time leader now in receiving yards. Aaron Simpson has a single-season interception, and he tied the career interception record at 7. He did that in just one season, so he ties that record as well. James Baird with the single-season field goal record with 11. He is the single career leader in PATs now, the single season PATs leader as well. And I mentioned, like I said, the record wins at 8 for this Dixie State football team. You know, it was just a season to remember in. And you know, if you're looking forward to next season, 290 days until Dixie State takes on SUU in their first ever Division I game in Cedar City. That's going to take place on September 5th, 2020, and we're 290 days away from that first Division I game. You know, you're going to look back on this season, and obviously, you know, you're going to look back with a lot of hope and a lot of joy. You know, seeing the season that they had and was able to put together under a new coaching staff, and after, like I mentioned, the tragedy that happened in the offseason with Abraham Reinhardt. Fun season and a group of guys who were able to come together and unite over, you know, kind of the overarching cause of the offseason tragedy with Abraham Reinhardt, and really did something special. And it was really fun to follow this team all season long. And, of course, the record 8-3 wins is tops for the NCAA Division II era. Now, it's going to be interesting to see where these records stand. It's going to be interesting to see where the athletic department keeps these records. Are they going to keep them in just the Division II era and close the book, and then beginning next year we'll start a new record book of Division I records, or are they going to loop them all into one? It's going to be fun to see how they do things when they start Division I next season. Well, that is my weekend observation. Had a lot to do with football and the tremendous season the Trailblazers had. But we got to take a timeout. When we come back, we will talk a little bit more. We'll do our Blazer Beat segment. I'll do it by myself and talk about the rest of the stuff going on Dixie State's campus this week. And we'll be back in just a few minutes with our Blazer Beat segment right after this.
You know, we may have started out small, we were great. Families and fans rallied behind their team. The community cared, and everyone showed up to cheer. Now we're bigger than ever. Dixie State is going to Division I.
Here we go in transition, and he throws it down with one hand. Lobs. Catch me. Touchdown, Trailblazer.
But at the end of the day, it's the community and fans that make us great. Whether you give $5 or $1,000, every dollar, every seat in the stands, every one of you can help blaze our trail to Division I athletics, because this is our team.
Radio Dixie 91.3. We don't play that. Nope, not that. A big fat no there. That's what we play. And stuff like that. On St. George's only alternative, Radio Dixie 91.3. Oh, and from 9 till midnight, we play this.
I need a one dance.
And this. Radio Dixie 91.3 FM.
All right, man. Need you to go deep.
All right, I'll catch this one, I promise. Post route, back of the end zone.
Got it. Let's do it.
We may not always play good, but when we want to look good, we come to the Dixie State campus store.
Located on the second floor of the Gardner Center. We'll see you there.
For over a century, Dixie State University has been shaping the Trailblazers of tomorrow by providing a culture of active learning, active life. With a paradigm of real-world experience mixed with cutting-edge technologies and rich traditions, we provide one of the most affordable educations in the West, set against the most stunning backdrop on the planet.
Welcome back inside Trailblazer Weekly as we continue on a Wednesday afternoon, a wet and rainy Wednesday afternoon, getting a big downpour of rain on this Wednesday afternoon. A winter storm warning for the rest of the state, but of course down here in St. George, just a little rain. But we march on a Wednesday afternoon. Want to get this segment started. We're gonna do the Blazer Beat segment. I got 3 or 4 things I want to cover in the Blazer Beat segment, but we'll get to that in just a minute or two. Wanted to get things started in this segment, showing you our Honolulu Grill highlight of the week. We'll kick that off right now as it starts. We mentioned this earlier. Cody Wilstead comes in his first pass of the game against Adams State. A one-handed catch by Chase Hess, and then a stiff arm there to cap things off. It goes 42 yards into the end zone, and that is our Honolulu Grill highlight of the week. You know, just one of the, like I said, I mentioned it in the first segment, one of those plays is we get to see this play one more time. Should note it made the top 5 plays of the NCAA Division II top plays of the weekend, and this one was number 5. Thought it could have been a little bit higher, but made the top 5 in that category. Didn't make it to the top 10 in Sports Center like we had a few weeks ago, but certainly a great play nonetheless. And this was the play that kind of got Dixie State started. Was a huge spark. Cody Wilstead came in, completes his first pass to Chase Hess, and it goes for a touchdown. And that was all the Trailblazers would need as they answered the 3 points of Adams State on that field goal with 28 unanswered points of their own, and got a 35-10 victory over Adams State. That was our Honolulu Grill highlight of the week. Let's give our award for Player of the Week, and it's going to go to Cody Wilstead, who was subsequently named the RMAC Offensive Player of the Week. I mentioned his stats in the first segment, but rehash them one more time. 18 of 29, 341 yards, and 5 touchdowns, tying the single-game record for touchdown passes in a season. Interesting to note, Mike Sanders, last season, on senior day against Colorado School Mines, passed for 5 touchdowns. This season, last game of the season, on senior day, Cody Wilstead passes for 5 touchdowns. Interesting little stat there that previous 2 seasons on the last game in Dixie State, in Trailblazer Stadium on senior day, the quarterbacks passed for 5 touchdowns each. Kind of a fun stat there as we move forward. Now with our Blazer Beat segment. We're talking women's basketball. We're going to get things started with women's basketball in our Blazer Beat segment. Crazy to believe that we're already talking about basketball. We're moving on from football now, and we're already talking women's basketball. They won both their games this weekend. Had a couple of NAIA schools come down and play in Dixie State. Beat La Sierra and Life Pacific over the weekend. Improved their record, and really was a couple of good games. A couple of teams where obviously you felt you had the upper hand. A couple of NAIA schools where they're not really going to compete at the level of a Dixie State or a Division II program, but these are still just tune-up games to get you ready for RMAC play, which actually not that far off. I mean, I know we just started about the season just starting last weekend, and already talking about RMAC play, which is going to come up in just a couple of weeks. On November 30th is the women's basketball's first RMAC game. Allie Franks was one of the highlights, one of the key players in these 2 victories over La Sierra. Beat La Sierra 77-59 and beat Life Pacific 82-30. And Allie Franks, the senior, was just flat out tremendous. I've watched her play all 4 seasons here at Dixie State since she was a freshman. And she's just extremely talented, and in my opinion, in her senior year, I've told Carrick and others that I think she could lead the RMAC in scoring. She's just that good. She's just very creative. She's very talented. She has a knack for creating her own shot, and she rarely takes a bad shot. I mean, there's a very few occasions where Allie Franks will take a bad shot, and so she's going to be the leader for this Dixie State women's basketball team. Like I mentioned, I think she could lead the RMAC in scoring. She led all scorers with 23 points in their win against La Sierra. Maddie Loftus came in off the bench, made 5 threes and scored 15 points. She's going to be a key to this Dixie State offense the entire season. If she can come off the bench and score 15 points or give you 4 or 5 threes off the bench, I mean, that's just going to give your bench scoring a tremendous amount of consistency if she can come in and get a couple of points there off the bench. She's a sharpshooter. I mean, she is their sharpshooter. She's told to come in and shoot threes when she gets open threes, and she does just that, scoring 15 points in that game. Mentioned beat Life Pacific 82-30 And, not a lot you can get from that team, but certainly a team where you get the victory and it goes on your record. Next up, men's basketball. They played 2 games over the weekend as well. It was a busy weekend in the Burns Arena. Had women's basketball and men's basketball in there as well. Providence was their first opponent. They lost to them. This was technically an exhibition game. This was a school from Providence that was not going to count against Dixie State's record, but it was an exhibition matchup. They did end up losing that game 80-76, but then they rebounded nicely and beat a really good St. Martin's team 75-71 the 2 days later. And Pagankoff, we talked to him on the show last week. I mean, he's just been filling up the stat sheet the entire season. Had 19 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, and 4 steals in that win in that loss over Providence. And then the next day against St. Martin's, had 8 points, 9 assists, and 7 rebounds. So nearly had triple-double in that second game as well. And, one of the things that we can learn from these games, obviously the exhibition doesn't count against the record. The win against St. Martin's does. But some of the things we can take against this game is what is Dixie State going to do for offense the entire season? Obviously, Hunter Schofield had a double-double with 18 points and 12 rebounds against Providence. And then Josh Newbold led all scorers with 22 points off the bench against St. Martin's. He had 22 points, like I mentioned. But where are the Trailblazers going to go for offense throughout the entire season? They don't have, at least to this point in the season, there's not been one clear guy that's been their go-to scorer when they need to get a bucket late in the game. Where can they go for scoring? They had a 13-0 run against Providence, got them back to 75-74. They were down 75-61 at that point. They go on a 13-0 run to get it back to 75-74 and just could not get over the hump. And that's going to be one of the things for the Trailblazers is who's going to be their consistent scorer, who's going to be the guy that they can go to when they need a bucket. They don't have a Trevor Hill or they don't have a scorer like that they can go to consistently throughout the entire season. Shot 31 threes against Providence. It was uncharacteristic of them to shoot so many threes. It's going to be interesting to see how they do offensively throughout the entire season. One thing I know, however, about Coach John Judkins, he is a genius, and he can put just about any product out onto the court, and they will be competitive. Moving on to volleyball. I mentioned this a little bit in the first segment, playing in the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference Tournament, and in the quarterfinal matchup against CSU Pueblo, a team they played about a month ago, and got that win against them as well, and won last night 3-1 to advance to the RMAC semifinals, and they will face MSU Denver on Friday. It was a really good match yesterday, and they were able to just kind of get out to good momentum. They won the first 2 sets pretty handily. Ironically enough, won both of them 25-19, which was a little bit surprising. But, they really controlled them well throughout the entire game. And CSU Pueblo came in, and they were tough to beat. I mean, they were a very tough team. They didn't make a lot of mistakes. They made you earn every point, especially in those first 2 sets. It was 25-19 in the first 2 sets for Dixie State. And then they rattled off a bunch of points in that third set and ended up winning that third set against Dixie State to force a fourth and final set. But then Dixie State, of course, dominated the fourth set and was leading 22-6 at one point. It was a dominant fourth set by Dixie State. CSU Pueblo didn't quit, however, in that fourth set. They did go on and go to a 9-2 run before Dixie State scored the final point and won the fourth set 25-15. Limited Pueblo to a hitting percentage of just .69 in that fourth set. They were tremendous in that fourth set. Were very, very disciplined and just played well in that fourth set. And I think that's kind of where it came down to. The difference was the Trailblazers just made a little fewer mistakes than CSU Pueblo did. And the Trailblazers now move on to play MSU Denver. Going to be a tough matchup against MSU Denver, the number 2 team in the number 2 seeded team in the conference. They played them on October 18th, lost 3-1. That match was a little bit more deceiving than it actually looks on the surface. They lost the first set 25-23, but they were leading that set 23-20. a 5-0 run at the end of that set let MSU Denver win that first set, and then Trailblazers won the second set 25-15. So if you think back to that game, if the Trailblazers close business when they're leading 23-20, and they win the first set and then they win the second set as well, could be a different matchup. So we'll see what they do on Friday against MSU Denver. It's going to be a fun atmosphere. Going to be a tough competitor, but this volleyball team doesn't quit, and they'll give you everything they have in order to advance. One last thing I wanted to touch on. Just got a few minutes left here in the segment. One thing I wanted to touch on real quick was the swimming team. The women's swimming team christened the new on-campus swimming pool with a dual meet victory over Biola on Saturday. The Human Performance Center is open, and it is beautiful. The Trailblazers women's swimming team was able to compete against Biola in the inaugural meet on Dixie State campus, and they won the Eagles by a count of 122-80. They won the very first event in the new pool as the team of Gracie Kroll, Hannah Hansen, Chloe Parch, and Kelsey Wright torched, won the 400-yard medley, and with a season best time of 3 minutes 59 seconds. So, really fun atmosphere. It was really fun. Carrick and I was able to take a tour of the Human Performance Center last Wednesday. In fact, after the show, we walked over there and was able to get a tour of the Human Performance Center. And what a remarkable building. It's going to be fun to see how this building changes things on campus for Dixie State and for the swim team. Obviously, they're in love with it, and it's an immaculate facility. If you have the chance and if you have the capabilities to go over there and look at this Human Performance Center, I strongly encourage that you do, because it is a remarkable facility. The women's swimming team obviously was able to get their first win there over Biola and christen the new building with a victory, and did so in dominant fashion over Biola. Former Pac West opponent. Interesting to note that the Blazers were able to beat Biola in that first swim meet on campus. Just a few minutes left. Like I mentioned, just a few scheduling things. Wanted to reiterate, if you're just joining us, wondering what the heck's going on. Doing the show solo today. Gonna do just a quick show. Got just a few minutes left. Obviously, wanted to mention no show next week. Going to be obviously difficult with no students on campus to run the show. It's going to be a Thanksgiving break. We're going to have no show next week. We'll pick it up the following week. Carrick Segmiller going to be joining me back again on the road right now with the women's soccer team. They'll be taking on their opponent in the South Central Regional. Should mention the women's soccer team. Like I mentioned, haven't touched on them much, but they're going to go and face Texas Women's University Friday at 1 p.m. in the South Central Regional. That game is going to take place at 1 p.m. In Colorado Springs. And crazy thing about the women's soccer team, they've only lost 3 matches the entire season. You think about it, they got the 5th seed. They lost in the RMAC tournament to MSU Denver, and they've only lost 3 matches all season. They've tied 5, so they've been in a situation where they could have lost more on the season, but they've only lost 3. They only got 3 losses on their record, and it's been about 10 days or so since they last played. November 8th was their last game against MSU Denver, where they lost on penalty kicks. Had to wait a long time to know if they would be selected into the South Central Regional. It's going to be interesting to see if they'll be rusty or if they'll be eager to get that bad taste out of their mouth. And once again, they take on 4-seeded Texas Women's University Friday at 1 p.m. in the quarterfinals of the South Central Regional. That is going to do it for today's show. Now, it's going to be, it was a short show, obviously, just a 30-minute show. We had some time constraints, and obviously with Carrick being gone, didn't want to leave him out of anything we did on the show. But that's going to do it for today, a quick episode. We'll see you in 2 weeks. No show next week for Thanksgiving. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Before we go, I wanted to give a quick shout-out to our sponsors, Honolulu Grill, the Dixie State Campus Store, and Rock Canyon Bank. We'll see you in 2 weeks for Drayson Ball and the entire CEC TV crew. We'll see you in 2 weeks.